ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. Namaskar to all of you. Welcome to the study of Great Master Sri Ramakrishna or Lila Prasanga, written by Shardanandaji Maharaj. Now, as we had decided earlier, we shall first go into the introduction written by Shardanandaji Maharaj for the chapter Divine Incarnation as Sadhaka. Sadhaka means spiritual aspirant, one who performs the spiritual disciplines to reach his goal is called Sadhaka. One who performs sadhana is called a Sadhaka. So divine incarnation as a Sadhaka. So we were looking into the introduction portion of this particular chapter. We will continue with that. Yes, it is due to mere weakness of faith and understanding that these devotees arrive at such a conclusion. They do not like to attribute human efforts, aims, etc. to the incarnation of God, only because they feel that such human failings contradict and therefore obstruct their cultivation of wholehearted devotion to these divine personalities. Therefore, we have nothing to say against them. But such a weakness, it is certain, is seen in a devotee only when his devotion is not sufficiently mature. At that stage of development, he can think of God only as power, and attribution of any kind of human weakness to him inhibits his devotional sense. In course of time, when devotion matures and deepens into genuine love of God, he finds the position reversed. He feels that the thought of God as power is an obstacle to the experience of him as pure love. And he ceases to attach any importance to the former aspect, that is power of the Lord. Then his only concentration and focus will be on just the love aspect of God. So now, to make it a little clear, let us go to Himalayas, where our Pandavas were living in Agnatavasa, or they were banished to forest by the Kauravas. So all the Pandavas now were staying in Himalayas. Now the eldest son of Pandu, that is Yudhishthira or Dharmaraja, who is considered to be a great personification of dharma, righteousness, was sitting there and looking at the Himalayas, and he was enjoying the beauty of the Himalayan mountain. By that time, some thought crossed in the mind of Draupadi. She came to Yudhishthira and asked him, "My dear Lord, I see that we Pandavas, we are into righteousness, we do only good things, we always are devoted to the Lord, and so many other good virtues. But why so much of difficulty to people who are good? The Lord should have rewarded us with good things, enjoyments. But now you see that though we are always adhering to righteousness, truthfulness, and all the good things, doing good things to the world, why is it that we are facing so many difficulties?" Then Yudhishthira smiles at Draupadi and tries to clear her doubt. He tells, "My dear Draupadi, see here, look at the Himalayas, huge mountains, so beautiful. I'm just looking at the Himalayas and enjoying that beauty with so much of love and devotion towards it, not because that Himalaya will give me something, that Himalaya should reward me something. I'm just enjoying the beauty of Himalaya, that's all. Should I expect that Himalaya will give me back something?" Likewise, we have to stick on to righteousness, we have to stick on to truthfulness and doing good for its sake, not for the sake that it will reward me. It is just like somebody will tell, "Oh, I'm always good, I'm doing good thing, nobody recognizes me, nobody rewards me for that." Why should someone reward? Why should someone reward you because you are truthful, you are good? The you becoming truthful and being on the path of righteousness itself is the greatest reward which the God has given to you. Once you get into the bad ways, bad methods, then you can't come out of it. It will be just a quagmire. It will be difficult and difficult. So it is a great reward by the God that you have been put into the path of righteousness. So many people are struggling and wriggling in that bad things and come out of it. So the reply was a great reply. I love that Himalayas, that's all. So I am looking at it. Not that Himalaya will be giving me something. Likewise, in the beginning only, we think of the power, the miracles, and other things. At the lower end of the spiritual life, we think of miracles, we think of so many powers, because our faith is not so matured. But once you go deeper into the spiritual aspects of life, you will start loving God for the sake of God, not for anything else. God is now not a medium for something to gain. He is the medium, he is the end, he is the goal, is also the means. So that is true bhakti, that is true devotion, that is true love. God for God's sake, for nothing else. So here, Shardanandaji Maharaj is taking to that aspect of pure spiritual life or pure bhakti devotion. Now, Shardanandaji is telling, in course of time when devotion matures and deepens into genuine love of God, he finds the position reversed. He feels that the thought of God as power is an obstacle to the experience of him as pure love. And he ceases to attach any importance to the former aspect, that is the power and greatness and miracles of God. So he ceases to attach any importance to former aspect as he grows in spiritual life. All the devotional scriptures say this over and over again. We see that although Sri Krishna's foster mother, Yashoda, daily experienced his divine powers. Now you can compare this example with Krishna and Yashoda. Yashoda knew that Lord Krishna was the incarnation and such a great Lord. So Sri Krishna's foster mother, Yashoda, daily experienced his divine powers. She looked upon him as just a boy. Though she was experiencing so many miraculous things with Krishna in that small age, killing so many great demons and other things, performing so many miraculous feats. But for Mother Yashoda, Krishna was not the great Lord. Though she was seeing, experiencing everything, Yashoda daily experienced his divine powers. She looked upon him as just a boy only and fondled or chastised him accordingly. Suppose she starts seeing the powerful, the miraculous aspect of the Lord, then she cannot love that child as her own child, and she cannot chastise, she cannot fondle, just have that relationship as a mother with the child. The gopis of Vrindavan similarly could not attribute any relation to Shri Krishna other than that of the beloved. Whether you are the greatest God of the universe, you are Parabrahma, we do not care for that. We know Krishna is our beloved, that's all. Our Krishna, nothing else. No power, no nothing great, other things than that. We love Krishna, that's all. He's our beloved. In spite of their knowledge that he is the very source of the universe, instances can easily be multiplied. When the devotees of the master, that is Ramakrishna, later on, expressed to him their great eagerness to have some kind of visions indicative of the majesty and power of God. So Ramakrishna, he would tell them endearingly, it is not good to have such visions because fear will interfere. Fear will intervene when you see that aspect of the God. Just like in the Vishwarupa Darshana, Arjuna was given that cosmic form, the Vishwarupa Darshana of Krishna. Such a great warrior, such a great friend of Krishna, born equally with him again and again in every avatar is being born. Such a person of such a great spiritual stature, whom Krishna called as the Nara Rishi, he got afraid, he couldn't see that cosmic form. He pleaded, "Oh Lord, I can't see this form of yours, cosmic form, Vishwarupa, the universal form. Please come back with 2 hands and 2 legs and the normal feature. I can't see you." He pleaded. He was so afraid to see that cosmic form. So then you cannot establish that relationship as your father, as your mother, as your child, as your friend. So that's why Ramakrishna was warning the devotees, it is not good to have such visions. Fear will intervene when you experience his powers, feeding and dressing him, and the deep loving relationship of thou and I will all cease. Alas, how often did we not feel piqued on such occasions and think that he was only evading our request? If, however, at that time, any devotee took courage and said feelingly with a firm faith, "Your grace can make the impossible possible. Please be compassionate and grant me the vision." The master would reply in an endearing tone, "Can I bring anything, my child?" What the mother wills happens on being so answered if one would still insist and say, "Your will is the mother's too." The master's usual reply was, "My child, I do wish that all of you have all kinds of spiritual states and visions, but is it fulfilled?" Instead of desisting, even then, if the devotee persisted in his faith, the master only expressed his love for him by a gentle smile and an affectionate look, or would sometimes say, "What shall I say? Let the mother's will be done." But the master, although so persistently, never tried to break that firm belief of the devotee and destroy spiritual attitude. Many a time did we see such a behavior on the part of the master and hear him say, the spiritual attitude of no one should be destroyed. Although not directly connected with the subject matter of this introduction, this topic, once raised, has to be clarified by explaining it in the light of a certain incident. The power of transmitting to others by a mere touch or by an act of will, the capacity to realize spiritual truths falls to the lot of very few aspirants. The master told us time and again that Swami Vivekananda, in course of time, would have such powers with which he would be able to do much good to the world. Such a highly qualified person as the Swami Vivekananda is indeed rare in the world. The master knew it well from the very beginning of the meeting and started molding his character and religious life in a special way by imparting to him the knowledge of the unity of existence spoken of in the Vedanta. Accustomed to the dualistic mode of worship of the Brahma Samaj, the Swami regarded the non-dualistic mode taught in the Vedanta as blasphemy. But the master tried in various ways to make him understand all these higher aspects of spiritual life told in the Vedanta, the monoistic attitude in Vedanta. But the master tried in various ways to make him practice it. The Swami said, as soon as I went to Dakshineshwar, the master gave me those books which he forbade others to read. Among other books, a copy of Ashtavakra Samhita was in his room. When the master found anyone reading the book, he would forbid him and would give him instead such book as Mukti and how to attain it, the Bhagavad Gita or some Purana. But scarcely had I gone to him when he took out that book and asked me to read it, or he would ask me to read some part of the Adhyatma Ramayana, which is full of non-dualistic idea. I would reply sometimes bluntly, what is the use of reading this book? It is sin, even to think I am God. The book teaches this blasphemy. It should be burnt. The master would smile and say, do I ask you to read it for yourself? I ask you to read a little to me. Please do it. In that case, you will not have to think that you are God. So I had to read a little for him at his request. Again, although he was training Swami Vivekananda that way, the master was guiding Swami Brahmananda and his other boy devotees in their spiritual lives in various other ways. Some through the worship of God with forms, some through that of God with attributes, but without forms, others through pure unalloyed devotion, and still others through devotion mingled with the discipline of the discrimination between the real and the unreal. Thus, although Swami Vivekananda and other boy devotees sat, slept, ate, walked about, and discussed religious theories together in the company of the master at Dakshineshwar, the latter was training them all in diverse ways according to their peculiar tastes and tendencies. So now we have seen the introduction for this chapter as Sadhaka. Shardananda ji is introducing us to that aspect. Now we shall go to see a little of the life of Rani Rasamani. We have seen some aspect of Rani Rasamani in the life of Ramakrishna yesterday. So we will go to a little deeper aspect and study deeply the life of Rani Rasamani. Sri Ramakrishna once said, Rani Rasamani was one of the 8 Nayikas. What is meant by Nayikas? Attendant goddesses. There are 8 attendant goddesses to the Divine Mother. So Rani Rasamani was incarnation of one of that Nayikas, attendant goddesses of Divine Mother. Sri Ramakrishna once said, Rani Rasamani was one of the 8 Nayikas, attendant goddesses of the Divine Mother. She came down to the world. She came down, Rani Rasamani, one of the attendant of Divine Mother. She came down to the world. These are the words of Sri Ramakrishna. Rani Rasamani came down to the world to spread the worship of Divine Mother. In the middle of the last century, this great woman of India provided a setting in which Sri Ramakrishna enacted his divine drama for 30 years. The whole story began in that beautiful temple garden on the Ganga, 4 miles north of Calcutta. As Sister Nivedita pointed out, humanly speaking, so Sister Nivedita is pointing out, she's telling, humanly speaking, without the temple of Dakshineshwar, there would have been no Sri Ramakrishna. Without Sri Ramakrishna, no Vivekananda. And without Vivekananda, no Western mission. So these were the words of Sister Nivedita. So you can see who made all this arrangement. It was Divine Mother through Rani Rasamani, who was one of the 8 Nayikas, Ashtanayikas, attendant goddesses of Divine Mother. She was Rani Rasamani. Ramakrishna is telling she came down to the world to spread the worship of Divine Mother. So she was now the one of the Ashtanayikas, and she came down to do the work of Divine Mother. So will she be made born in a very rich family with all the other facilities? No. Rani Rasamani, we cannot know the Leela, the play of the Divine Mother. We have to just accept everything. Rani Rasamani was born in September 1793 at Kona, a small village on the eastern bank of Ganga, about 30 miles north of Calcutta. Her given name was Rasamani, but her mother nicknamed her Rani, literally queen. When she was 1.5 years old, her father, Hare Krishna Das, and her mother, Ramapriya Dasi, were pious and simple, but very poor. So she got the name. Now, she was nicknamed as Rani when she was 1.5 years old. We came to know Rani Rasamani's father was Hare Krishna Dasa and mother Ramapriya Dasi were very pious and simple, but also very poor. Her father maintained the family by farming and by repairing the roofs of cottages in the village. The children of poor families live through sun and rain, as well as cold and lack of nourishment. They must struggle from their vast birth, from their very birth. They must struggle from their very birth. They are laborers from their childhood. When Rasamani was very young, she carried food to the field for her father, helped her mother with the household work, and picked vegetables from the garden. Like other poor children, she was never demanding. And no one ever heard her say, I cannot. Her favorite pastime was to swing with her friends on a hammock, which her father had tied to a branch of a mango tree in their garden. So her favorite pastime was playing on the hammock, swinging. Now, Hare Krishna, though a farmer, knew how to read and write. That is the father of Rasamani. He knew how to read and write Bengali, and this he taught to his daughter. He had also a gift for narrating stories from the traditional religious literature. As a village storyteller, he played a vital role in spreading mass education, and the villagers took advantage of his talents. In the evenings, they would gather at his house and listen to his melodious and dramatic readings from the Ramayana and Mahabharata and the Puranas. Rasamani would also listen to those tales, and her childhood imagination would carry her mind high. Rasamani's parents were devout Vaishnavas, that is, followers of Vishnu, a devotional sect, and it was their custom to put special religious marks on their foreheads before practicing spiritual disciplines. You have to note here, she was born in the family of Vaishnavas, Vishnu devotees, but she developed great devotion to Mother Kali. which indicates that in India, there was so much of religious freedom. Anybody born into any family, you can take up devotion to any gods or goddesses. So, as Swami Vivekananda used to tell, the first and foremost condition of spiritual life or religion is liberty, freedom. So much of freedom is there in Hinduism. You can take up whichever god or goddesses, whichever path you want. So many innumerable paths are there. Nobody will be forced. Even if you take up atheism, you'll be respected. Materialism, you'll be respected. You'll be given a place of a rishi. The materialistic people who are called Charvakas, their philosophy was, now don't worry about whether you will get a heaven or not after death. We do not know whether heaven is there. We do not know before the birth what it was. We know only this present life. So enjoy this life. How? You need not be moralistic and other things. Just take some debt, take loan, and start drinking ghee, clarified butter. Means enjoy your life, not just eating, putting little ghee, just go on drinking, consuming ghee. Means enjoy your life nicely as much as you live in this earth. Don't worry about giving back the debt or loan. Enjoy your life. That is their philosophy, Charvaka. Pranam kritva ghritam pibet. So go on enjoying your life. Don't think of giving back and other things. Just you are here, we do not know what happens, heaven or anything afterwards. Enjoy your life. So they were also given the position of rishis. Such was the freedom. It's only after the invasion of the Western people and the Islamic invasion. So all the changes happened in Hinduism. Otherwise, it was a very free society. Anybody could take up any type of religion, or anybody could go and take up whichever path you want and go and realize God. A lot of freedom was there. The society was very good. So the things got changed due to the invasion. Islamic invaders would be barbaric, and also the other Christian invaders. The whole thing start changing. Now, we have to see Rani Rasmani, though born in the family of Vaishnavas, later on she became a great devotee of Mother Kali. So let us see her Vaishnava family. It was their custom to put special religious marks on the forehead before practicing spiritual discipline. Rasmani liked to imitate their parents. Sitting in front of a mirror, she would also paint her face with religious marks. Thus was planted in her mind the seed of religion, which later grew to an immense form. She had spontaneous faith and love for God. And her character was a blend of strength, truthfulness, uprightness, contentment, and other noble qualities. Now you can see the different wonderful qualities personified. So we all know these qualities, but we do not know that can be assimilated in one woman. So that when we read, we will get inspiration that we can also be like that. What were the great qualities which were there in Rasmani? Her character was a blend of strength, truthfulness, uprightness, contentment, and other noble qualities. You can be strong, you can be truthful, you can be upright, but at the same time, you can be contented too. Rasmani was only 7 years old when her mother Ramapriya Dasi died from a high fever. At the time, very less medical facilities. So she died of high fever. It was a great shock to the little girl. Her relatives tried to console her by saying, your mother has gone to recover her health and she will be back soon. So that small child of 7 believed in it. But eventually she understood that her mother had died, and only time the great healer could remove the sorrow from her heart. Beside his daughter, Hare Krishna also had 2 sons and 1 sister in his household. Grief and poverty tormented his heart, but his faith in God helped him to survive. 4 years passed, and then another problem kept in. Hare Krishna began to worry about Rasmani's marriage. It would require a great deal of money. Although Rasmani was only 11 years old, she looked older, and she was also a very beautiful girl. One day in the spring of 1804, Rasmani went to bed in the Ganga with a few other villages. She did not know that some people on a boat were watching her from a distance. It was the large pleasure boat of Rajachandra Dasa, son of Pritaram Das. Preeta Ram Das, the great landlord of Jan Bazaar, Calcutta. Rajchandra had married twice, but both of his wives had died, so he was not willing to marry again. His father, however, wanted him to remarry so that his lineage might continue. Preeta Ram's eldest son, Harachandra, had died earlier without any children. So he wanted that this son should marry and have children so that his lineage will continue. Rajchandra often went to Triveni near Rasmani's village by boat with his friends for a pleasure trip, as well as for a holy bath in the confluence of the three rivers there. When Rajchandra's friend showed him Rasamani from a distance, he was very much impressed. With Rajachandra's consent, his friends anchored the boat and made inquiries about her. They then returned to Calcutta. Preeta Ram was delighted to hear the news and he immediately sent a message to Hare Krishna with a proposal of marriage. Hare Krishna took it as a godsend and gave his approval. The marriage was held at Rajchandra's Calcutta residence in April 1804. So in those days, it was arranged marriage. So father was very happy. He was very much worried. How could I marry off my daughter? Spend so much of money. They were very poor. Now he thought this was God sent and he approved for the marriage. Rasmani's father-in-law, Preeta Ram, was an intelligent, self-made man. He was born in a poor family in 1753. His parents died when he was young and he was brought up by his aunt. He began his career as a clerk in the salt distributing agency in Calcutta and then became the manager of a large estate in Nator, East Bengal, now in Bangladesh. Later, he started his own business in Calcutta and became very rich. Now, wealth begets wealth. It is said that Rajachandra earned, that is the son of Preeta Ram. Preeta Ram died in 1817. His son Rajachandra inherited 6,50,000 rupees in cash and a vast amount of property. So wealth begets wealth. It is said that Rajachandra, the husband of Rani Rasmani, earned 50,000 rupees in one day through an auction. In those days, 50,000 rupees was very huge. Like his father, Rajachandra was a very successful man, but he always consulted his intelligent wife, Rashmani, before making any decisions. Although she had very little education, Rajachandra greatly admired and appreciated his wife's perception, common sense, tactfulness, and humility. Wealth generally makes a person proud and haughty, arrogant, but the simple village girl, Rashmani, remained unchanged. Her quiet nature conquered the hearts of the whole household. She served her husband, supervised the kitchen work and other household activities, and performed worship and spiritual disciplines just as she used to do at her village home. Instead of hoarding their vast wealth, Rajachandra and Rashmani undertook many charitable projects. Their hearts cried out for the poor, the miserable, and the distressed. In 1823, when many places of Bengal were devastated by floods, Rashmani spent money liberally to feed and house the afflicted. In that same year, her father died, Hare Krishna died. When she went to Ganga to perform certain religious rites in connection with his death, she noticed the terrible condition of the bathing ghat. She then requested her husband to construct a new ghat and also a road for the people. She was worried when she saw that the bad condition of that bathing ghat leading to Ganga. She now wanted to construct a beautiful one so that people will be benefited. Lord Bentinck, Governor General of India, gave Rajachandra permission for the project, and thus Babu Ghat and Babu Road, now which is called Rani Rashmani Road, were built. Rajachandra had another bathing ghat constructed in Ahiritola, in the western part of Calcutta, in memory of his mother, and a home for the dying at Nimtala at the request of Rashmani. So a home for the dying. They also donated 10,000 rupees for the improvement of the government library, arranged for a free ferry to cross the Beliaghata Canal, and in Talpukur, a village 14 miles north of Calcutta, they had a large pond dug to alleviate the water scarcity. So like that, they wished to do a lot of charitable work. Rani Rasmani and husband, because now from the influence of Rani Rasmani, Rajachandra was very rich. They just didn't spend the money on themselves for their luxuries and sense enjoyments. They started helping people, charity, temples, and so many other things. I just want to bring you to notice one small incident from the life of one great queen, how the great queens of India used to function. So now, just like you see, Rani Rasmani was so much interested in charitable deeds. There was one girl at that time in India. It was ruled by the Britishers, or it was maybe the Islamic period. There was one girl growing up in a princely family. Her name was Ahalya Bai Holkar. Holkar was a kingdom or from the Maratha Empire. So it was based somewhere in Madhya Pradesh. The Marathas had gained the kingship and they were ruling that area. Holkar family. Even now that Holkar family is still living in Madhya Pradesh. There are some politicians from that group too, Holkar family. So her name was Ahalya Bai. The family name was, surname was Holkar. Now she is a small girl, maybe of 7 or 8. So the family seniors, father and mother, made arrangement that a scholar, a Pandit will come and teach her Bhagavad Gita every day. So the Pandit, a pious man, a very great man, started teaching Bhagavad Gita. So now he introduced Bhagavad Gita and everything, gave the introduction to Bhagavad Gita. Then the Pandit started teaching her the first verse of Bhagavad Gita. What is that first verse? Dharma kshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yuyutsavaha Mamakaha Pandavaschaiva Kim Akurvata Sanjaya. This is the first verse of Bhagavad Gita. So what is the first line of Bhagavad Gita? Dharma kshetre Kurukshetre. That's all. Now the Pandit or the scholar taught this Ahalya Bai Holkar as a very small girl, the meaning and the word Dharma kshetre Kurukshetre. Not even he has gone to the other second line. The first part of the first line, Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yuyutsavaha Mamakav Pandavaschaiva Kim Akurvata Sanjaya. So the first part of the first line of Bhagavad Gita, that's all. He explained the meaning, Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre. Now this girl, young girl, maybe of 12 or 10 or whatever, Ahalya Bai, she told, I have understood the whole gist of Bhagavad Gita. Let me stop studying Bhagavad Gita today. And I have got the whole gist of the whole Bhagavad Gita. Lord gave me that. The scholar was stupefied. What is this? Flabbergasted. He was surprised. What are you telling? Just first verse, there are 700 verses. Of the 700 verse, the first verse, in that first verse, I have taught you only the first line. In the first line, I have taught you only the half line. Dharma Kshetra, Kurukshetra. And you are telling that you understood the whole of Bhagavad Gita and no need of study. Furthermore, now I will start acting. I will start implementing the teaching of Bhagavad Gita. And what did you learn, mother? He asked, the Pandit asked Ahalya Bai, that young girl, the queen, Ahalya Bai Holkar. So she told, Lord gave me the message, Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre. You arrange it in a different way. It becomes Kshetre Kshetre Dharmam Kuru. In all the religious places, in all the philosophical places or places of pilgrimages, go on doing work of charity. The Lord gave me the message. I got it. Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre. She arranged it. Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre. What is the message she got from the Lord? Lord Krishna? Kshetre Kshetre. Arrange it. Dharmam Kuru. In every pilgrimage site and in every site of that religious places, in everything, in temple and everything, charity, do charity to people. That's all. I got the message. No more do I want Bhagavad Gita. I got the complete essence. Go on doing Karma Yoga. Go on doing Karma Yoga. This is the essence. The Lord has told, dedicate it to the Lord and do. The whole gist of Bhagavad Gita is something like that. Give up everything. Tyaga, as Ramakrishna tells. Go on doing charitable works. Go on doing philanthropic works. Karma Yoga. In all the religious places and to help the poor. That's all. I got the message. And until her last, she did so much of work. Go everywhere in India, whichever part of India you go. She was from Madhya Pradesh, Ahalya Bai Holkar, from that princely family. She built Kashi Vishwanath temple in Varanasi, which was demolished by the Muslims, Islamic invaders. She rebuilt that Kashi Vishwanath. Present Kashi Vishwanath temple is built by her. Omkareshwar temple, roads, tanks, the metal road from Puri, which goes near Kamarpukur, that was also built by her. In Kamarpukur, Bengal, she built. From Madhya Pradesh, everywhere, temples, roads, ponds, lakes, hospitals, charitable houses, food, everything. She went on doing her last. I got the message from Bhagavad Gita. Kshetre, kshetre, dharmam kuru. Go on doing charitable deeds. That's all. That's the message of all Bhagavad Gita. See the faith, and she did wonderful everywhere you go now. You hear, you can see the name of Ahalya Bai Holkar. Even now, she is there. So that was what we can see from Rasmani. Rasmani was something like that. She was also doing so much of work of charity. And now that's why you can see she's preparing. Divine Mother has sent her to do all the preparation for Ramakrishna's Leela, the great Avatara. Now, after the introduction and also the, what you call, Rasamani's life, sometime we did it. We will see, continue the introduction and Rasamani's life in the next class. Now we'll enter into proper the great master, where Shardanandaji Maharaj will take us to Ramakrishna's life, written here, but still again you will find Rasamani only here. Now, she wants to build the Kali temple. She has already started, embarked now. She's got the commandment from Divine Mother Kali, do not go to Kashi. Just build me on the bank of Ganga one beautiful temple for me, install my stone image, and then arrange all the worship and also food offering every day. I'll be pleased by that. Now, Rani Rasmani's long accumulated devotion to the Mother of the Universe was about to assume a visible form in the shape of a temple, and the image. She purchased a spacious piece of land on the bank of the Bhagirathi, another name of Mother Ganga. I explained it to you why she got the name Bhagirathi. She also, Ganga is another name, Janhavi, Bhagirathi. So many other names, Bhishma Mata are there. So on the bank of Ganga, spending a large sum of money. Rani Rasmani, she's also doing a lot of charitable work. She's now building temple to Mother Kali, service of Divine Mother, service of the poor, seeing God in them as children of Divine Mother. So everywhere she's doing that Karma Yoga, just like I explained about Ahalya Bai Holkar. So, but she is this great lady, is as we saw in the life, one of the Ashtanayikas, the attendant goddesses of Divine Mother. She took the human form to spread the name of Divine Mother and make arrangement for the play of Ramakrishna. So what can we see here? The Avatara, we saw only the male aspect of Gadadhara Vishnu and another male aspect of Lord Shiva. But who is there playing this Leela? It's also Divine Mother in Ramakrishna. In Ramakrishna also it was only Divine Mother Kali who was existing and doing all this Leela. If you want, let us go to the fag end of Ramakrishna's life. Before he gave up his body in Samadhi, Ramakrishna transferred some power into the body of Narendra, Vivekananda. At that time he was Narendra, young Narendra. So in the life we can see that something like 2000 watt current or high electricity got transferred from the body of Ramakrishna into the body of Narendra. So he transferred power. So many of the people in South Africa also are thinking about that and telling that, oh, power was transferred, was transferred. Now also we can see some people are transferring power from their guru to the disciple. But people do not know what really happened. So they speak like that. But Sharat Chandra Chakravarti, one of the greatest disciple of Swami Vivekananda, householder disciple, he was a great Sanskrit scholar. Swami Vivekananda had a lot of affection to him. So great Swamis like Swami Brahmananda, Sharadananda would be afraid to approach Swami Vivekananda at that time, the great world conqueror. But this young householder disciple, Sharachandra Chakravarti, had free access and was very free with Swami Vivekananda to go and ask questions, pester him with so many doubts. And Vivekananda would be very happy to answer everything. So it's recorded all that conversation between him, that Sharachandra Chakravarti and Swami Vivekananda had put it into a book form. So in that, we can see at one place, he asked the question, Swamiji, what is that in your life and in the life of Ramakrishna? It is told that before just giving up his body in Samadhi, Ramakrishna transferred some high electricity power or something into you. What was that? What was that power like electricity? Then Swami Vivekananda replied, no electricity, nothing power, that and this. That Divine Mother Kali, who was until then residing in the body of Sri Ramakrishna, that day, what you are telling, that some power and other things, electricity entered into me, no power, no electricity. That Mother Kali, who was residing in the body of Sri Ramakrishna until then, she entered my body that day, that time. And she's making me so many work, all this going to the different part of the world, in the Parliament of Religions, all the lectures, everything she's constantly sitting on my heads with me in this body, residing in this body. She's making me do all these work. She's never giving me even a small bit rest. She's continuously making me all this work. So it was Divine Mother Kali who was residing in the body of Ramakrishna. That was her. That was the Ishtadevata. Here both the devotee, Gadadhara Vishnu, Shiva, Shakti, Divine Mother Kali, everybody are there in Ramakrishna. That's the speciality. That's why Ramakrishna is called Sarvadeva Devi Swarupa. So whenever Ramakrishna, he had so much devotion and love towards that Mother Durga or Kali. Whenever he wanted to see Mother Kali, earlier he used to cry and Mother used to come outside in the form of some divine form and show him and console him in the beginning as a sadhaka. But after some time, what happened? Whenever he wanted to see Mother Kali, he need not go and cry and ask her to come and give her darshan. He used to go take a mirror or stand in front of the mirror. If he would see, he had obliterated his ego to such an extent, he had removed that I ego. That is the basics of spiritual life. Basics of spiritual life is, or religious life is, perfect self-abnegation according to Vivekananda. So removal of selfishness, removal of ego completely is the essence of spiritual life. Ego is to be removed completely. But we think that we are moving forward in spiritual life and develop more and more ego. Ego is to be destroyed. Now, Ramakrishna had obliterated completely his ego. And now Divine Mother Kali started staying in that body, making use of that pure, perfect personality. And so when he wanted to see Mother Kali, just take a mirror or go and stand in front of a mirror. If he sees, he would not see Ramakrishna, he would see Mother Kali. So whenever he wanted to see Mother Kali, he had to go just stand in front of the mirror or take a mirror and see. He sees not Ramakrishna but Kali. That was the personality of Sri Ramakrishna. So now, see here, Gadadhara Vishnu has come. This time as an avatara. Lord Shiva has come. And you can see Divine Mother Kali is also there. The junction, Trivedi Sangama, just like if you go to Prayagraj, earlier it was called Allahabad. The Muslim invaders destroyed that place, sacred Trivedi Sangama, 3 rivers joining together, Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati, and named as Allahabad, but its original name was Prayagaraja. Now they have renamed after Yogi became the Adityanath Yogi ji became the chief minister. He renamed it as again the old name Prayagaraja. That Allahabad name of the invaders have been removed. So just like there is the confluence of 3 rivers, here confluence of so many gods and goddesses, and the 3 rivers, main rivers can be seen. Vishnu, Shiva, Divine Mother, In Ramakrishna, you can see that confluence. Now, Divine Mother has sent Bhagirathi. No, Divine Mother has sent Rani Rasmani to do her work, to spread her name. And she did all this Dakshineshwar temple. And as Nivedita told, she did built all this Dakshineshwar temple for whom? For the play of Ramakrishna. And who is Ramakrishna? Gadadhara, Vishnu, Shiva, and Kali. Kali made all this arrangement. So now you can see. So what did Rani Rasmani do? Though the work of construction was going on for 7 or 8 years, the whole edifice was not completed even by AD 1855. So the Rani reflected within herself, as life is uncertain, the desire of installing the Mother of the Universe may not be fulfilled in my lifetime. If it takes such a long time to complete the temple, resolving in her mind thus, the Rani had the ceremony of the installation of the Mother performed on the Snana Yatra day. I told we recently talked about Snana Yatra. In the last class, I told about Snana Yatra. And now after Snana Yatra, there is Ratha Yatra. Now presently in India, the Ratha Yatra of Jagannatha Swami in Puri is going on. So that was the only auspicious day left. So Rani Rasmani couldn't wait any longer. Though anything connected with Divine Mother was not there, she didn't care. One auspicious day is enough. What is there for any auspicious day for installing the Divine Mother? Anything done in the name of Divine Mother itself is auspicious. Why should you wait for auspicious time? So she performed the installation of Mother on the Snana Yatra day on May 31st, AD 1855. As it is necessary for the reader to know a few events that took place before this, we narrate them below. What is that few incidents? Either because of the divine commandment she received from the goddess herself, or out of natural hankering of her heart. For devotees always love to serve their chosen ideal with things they consider best. There arose a great earnest eagerness in the mind of Rani to offer cooked food daily to Mother. The Rani thought, temples and other buildings have been built to my liking. I am going to dedicate property sufficient for carrying on the service regularly. So something like a provident fund. So at that time, no bank were there. So how to keep the provident fund? They used to keep that fund in the form of jewelries, gold, diamond, and land, property, and other things. So that land, property, jewelry, everything, the money which would come out of that would be used for the maintenance of the temple. So now temples and other buildings have been built to my liking. I'm going to dedicate property sufficient for carrying on the service regularly. But in spite of doing all these things, if I cannot serve her to my heart's content, see the devotion of Rani Rasmani. She's thinking, if I don't do the service of Divine Mother to my heart's content, I've done all the other things. In spite of doing all this, if I cannot serve her, Divine Mother, to my heart's content and offer her cooked food daily, everything will be in vain. What is the use of doing all these things if I can't do that service to the Divine Mother? It will fetch me at the most a little reputation, name and fame. People will say, how great Rani Rasmani was. But of what avail are such words of people to me? What is the use of such name and fame? I don't care for those name and fame. For me, the important is service of Divine Mother. Name and fame will come and go. I'm not bothered about my name and fame. But my important desire, my heartfelt desire is I have to serve the Divine Mother to my heart's content. How? It may fetch me at the most a little reputation. People may say how great Rani Rasmani was. But of what avail are such words of the people to me? O Mother of the Universe, she fervently prayed. O Mother of the Universe, she fervently prayed, thou hast given me much name and fame in other respects, but in this case, do not befool me by giving me this trash. She's considering the name and fame and other things which she has got as trash. Mother, please do not befool me by giving all those trash to me, the name and fame and other things. I don't want that. It does not matter whether fame accrues to me or not, but I pray fervently to you, O Mother, remain always actually manifested here and fulfill the cherished desire of this servant of thine by accepting daily service. Please, mother, stay here in this temple, in this image, and you have to accept the service, food offerings, all the service from morning to evening, whatever. That's the fervent prayer of this servant. Please remain, I pray, remain always actually manifested here and fulfill the cherished desire of this servant of thine by accepting daily service. She is Rani. She's a great landlord. She owes so much of property, but she's calling herself as the servant of Divine Mother. See the devotion, see the humility. You can just see the aspect. I don't want the name and fame. Where the name and fame comes to me, I'm not bothered about it, what people tell. Tasmin tushte jagat tushtam. I want that you should be pleased, Mother. I fervently pray, Mother, please come here, stay here. You should be always here accepting. The service given here, you should stay here, bless all the people. See the desires of the devotees. Wherever you go in India, I told about the story of Gaya Vishnu. How was Gaya Vishnu, Gadadhar Vishnu established there in Gaya in Bihar? That great Asura, the demon, Gaya Asura, he did lot of penance. Though most of the Asuras or demons were against Vishnu, they hated Vishnu. But here was one Asura who was very devoted to Lord Vishnu. He did lot of penance to please Vishnu. When Vishnu came to him and gave him the darshan, what was the desire he asked? I have got you, O Lord. I'm so pleased with you. You are there with me. I'm not bothered about any other things. But what is the boon that you should give me? You should always stay here in this place, Gaya. And whenever people come here and offer Pinda Pradhana, the Shraddha and other karmas, the obsequies or the last rites of their parents, so you should give liberation to them. I pray anybody coming and praying for their ancestors, they should get liberation. That was the boon. He didn't ask for himself. He asked for us, the other people. And Vishnu promised, I will stay there. He left his 1 feet. Even if you go there, you can see that 1 feet. I had asked our people to show that video. I have the video that can be showed to our people. That 1 feet is there. If you go to this thing, Gaya, you can see that 1 feet of Lord Vishnu. They will do the worship. They will do the Pinda Pradhana on that. And you get liberation is guaranteed. So see that Gayasura, a demon, is asking for others, for other people, not for himself. Rani Rasamani asking for others, for us. Mother, stay here and bless all the people. Ahalya Bai Holkar, the first verse of Gita. Do charity, do work in the religious places, temple, rivers, for poor people, for us. So unselfishness to the core. That is spirituality. Removing of the selfishness, that is spirituality. Perfect self-abnegation. Removal of that lower self, selfishness, and manifesting unselfishness, that is spirituality. That is religious life. We do not understand the core, the basics of spiritual life. And see here that Mother Rasamani or Rani Rasamani, what is she? Her fervent prayer, she is telling, I am your servant, Mother. It does not matter whether fame accrues to me or not. I don't want name and fame. It is trash. Don't befool me by giving that. But I pray fervently, my dear Mother, remain always actually manifested here and fulfill the cherished desire of this servant of thine by accepting daily service. Whether I may die or may leave or not, you have to be always here, accept the service. So if you are here, many people will come and benefit. Pundalika, the great devotee of Vithala, another aspect of Krishna, he also did that. He went and committed suicide. Krishna was waiting there to give him boon. He made him stand on that bricks because he was serving his father and mother with so much of devotion. So he came to give boon because of this devotion to father and mother. He thought now he'll go after their parents died. He made Krishna to wait. Serving and serving. Finally, after so many years, they passed away. Krishna was still waiting. He would not go to ask boon from Krishna. Krishna was waiting. He has promised him. Then he went to take bath, do all the ceremonies of his father and mother. They had passed away. Now, if I go back, Krishna will give me boon and go away. What is the use? So I will not go back. So he just, because my father and mother have gone, I will also die. He committed suicide in that river. Why? He thought, if then Krishna will be still waiting for me. So you'll be there, and all the devotees in future can come, and they will be benefited because you will be staying on this earth. Otherwise, you will go to Vaikuntha or Goloka. So let him stay here, and people get benefited. He himself committed suicide. He died. So that all the other people we can benefit. Now we go to the temple and see Vithala there standing. So these are the devotees. This is devotion. Unselfishness is devotion. So the Rani saw that her inferior status in the caste scale, because she was from the caste of Kaivarta, the boatman or the fisherman. So she was from the inferior status in the caste scale, and scriptural prohibitions connected with it were what stood as main obstacles in the way of her arranging for cooked food offerings. Her own heart, however, never doubted that the mother of the universe would accept her offerings of cooked food. In fact, her heart was always full of joy at that thought and was never hesitant. Why was then that improper prohibition instituted? Who wrote these scriptures? Were the authors of the scriptures heartless men, or urged by self interest? Did they try to impose the distinction between the high and the low even before the mother of the universe? If so, she had no use of such scriptures. She would rather follow the sacred longing of her heart. But what was the way out even then? If she were to act against a prevailing custom, the devout Brahmanas and good people would not come to the temple to take prasad and get benefit of the temple, Divine Mother Day. What was then the solution? The Rani had the written opinions of great scholars, Pandits, bought from various places, but none of them was to her liking. Although the construction of the temple and the making of the image had been completed, there was no sign of fulfillment of Rani's desire to serve her to her heart's content. None of the views on scriptural injunctions expressed by the scholars, big and small, proved helpful. When all her hope were almost dashed to the ground, one day a ruling came from Ram Kumar's Chatushpati at Jamapukur. So she had invited suggestions from different scholars, different great Pandits, and now this Ram Kumar was also in Calcutta and Jamapukur. He had put his name in that particular group of Pandit scholars. His name was registered there. What is that? Chatushpati at Jamapukur. So Ram Kumar also sent this view when Rani had asked for how to make this arrangement to do the worship of the Divine Mother, because she, from the lower caste, a fisherman, has built the temple. Brahmanas will not come to officiate there or do the work or take prasada. How can this be solved, this problem? So now Ram Kumar gave a suggestion, because she had sent the invitation. So now Ram Kumar sent his suggestion. What was that beautiful suggestion which was very much liked? So many other different scholars had sent the suggestions, but that was not to the liking of Rani Rasmani. But now the suggestion of Ram Kumar was so beautiful, which read, if the Rani makes a gift of the property to a Brahmana and then install the goddess in the temple and make arrangement for the offering of the cooked food, there will be no violation of the injunction of the scriptures. The Brahmanas and other high caste people will not then incur blemish if they take prasad in the temple. Hopes revived in the Rani's heart. She decided to consecrate the temple in the name of her Guru and, with his permission, take the position of an officer for superintending his property and the service in his temple. Afterwards, the Rani informed other Pandits of her intention of following the scriptural prescription given by Ram Kumar. So now you can see how Ram Kumar is coming to the picture of Dakshineshwar temple, Rani Rasmani's that Dakshineshwar temple, and from Ram Kumar now the great soul will enter into the scene. See how the divine play is going on. So the problems, the difficulties which has come, crept in the form of this caste prejudice or something is also helpful in a way to bring in Ramakrishna into the scene. So see the divine plan. Now, after she got this injunction, she was very happy. What a wonderful suggestion. Hopes revived in Rani's heart. She decided to consecrate the temple in the name of her Guru, give all that property in the name of his Guru, and with his permission take the position of an officer for superintending his property, and the service in his temple. Afterwards, the Rani informed other Pandits of her intention of following the scriptural prescription given by Ramkumar. Although they did not dare to say plainly that it would be an unscriptural action, they nevertheless said the action is still against the prevailing custom of society. The Brahmanas and other good people cannot take prasad there, even though it is done that way. We can very well infer that Rani's attention was greatly attracted to Ramkumar by this event. When one ponders, one finds that to issue such a prescription in those days was indicative of not only the Catholicity on the part of Ramkumar, the minds of the Brahmana Pandits, the leaders of society, had got confined to a narrow groove in those days. There were few amongst them who could step out of it, read a liberal meaning to the injunctions of the scriptures, and give opinions according to the circumstances. Consequently, people felt an inclination to set a knot to their opinions. Now, the connection of the Rani with Ramkumar, however, did not end here. Although she paid proper respect to the members of the family of a spiritual teacher, the intelligent Rani observed distinctly their ignorance of the scriptures and unfitness to perform divine service according to them. Therefore, she made up her mind to see that the whole charge of the service of the new temple was permanently placed in the hands of Brahmanas of virtuous conduct, well versed in the scriptures, taking care at the same time to see that the just and proper gift due to her Guru's family were not affected. Here again, the prevailing custom of the society stood in her way. In those days, the Brahmanas born of good families and devoted to religious tradition did not even salute the deities installed by Shudras, the lower caste people, let alone worshipping them. They regarded the degraded Brahmanas, such as the family of Rani's spiritual Guru, virtually as Shudras. It was therefore no wonder that no Brahmana of virtuous conduct able to perform the ritual and officiate as a priest agreed to take charge of the worship in the Rani's temple. However, the Rani did not give up hope, and increasing the pay and other remuneration, continued to search for a priest at various places. The home of Hemangini Devi, the master's cousin, was in the village of Shiho, not far from Kamarpukur. Many Brahmanas lived there. One Mahesh Chandra Chattopadhyaya of that village served in the estate of the Rani. Thinking perhaps that he might be able to earn a little more money thereby, he came forward to procure Brahmanas for the Rani's temple to work as priests and cooks. Mahesh undertook to make that arrangement and selected his elder brother Kshetranath for the post of the priest in the temple of Radha Govinda, either with a view to convincing the poor Brahmins of the village that accepting employment in the Rani's temple was not reprehensible, or with a view to improving the pecuniary condition of his family, or both. As he appointed one of his own family to work for the Rani, it became easy to a great extent to procure other Brahmanas for service in the temples. But he became very anxious when, in spite of much effort, he could not procure a fit priest for the Kali temple. Because doing the rituals of Kali temple is very, very difficult according to the tantras. It should be done very perfectly. It's not as simple of the worship of Vishnu or Hari. The rituals and other things in the Kali temple is very, very strict, and it has to be done very perfectly. So to find a person who can do the worship of Kali in a perfect way, they couldn't get it. It was very difficult. Mahesh had been for a long time acquainted with Ram Kumar, brother of Gadadhar. It seems they had close acquaintance with each other from their friendly contact in the village. They were from the nearby neighboring villages. It was not unknown to Mahesh that Ram Kumar was a devout sadhaka. He was not only a priest, he was not only a scholar, but he was really a sadhaka, a spiritual aspirant, and had long ago got himself initiated in the mantra of Shakti. Not only that, he had got the initiation in the mantra of Divine Mother, Shakti, of his own accord. We infer that Mahesh knew also of the strange circumstances of Ram Kumar and his family's, that is the pecuniary condition, the strained financial condition. So his intention was drawn to Ram Kumar for solving the problem of finding a priest for the temple of Mother Kali. But the next moment, he remembered that Ram Kumar was a Brahmana who did not officiate in sacrifices performed by men of inferior caste. Although he sometimes accepted the post of a priest in the house of Digambar, Mitra, and others in Calcutta, would he accept it in the temple of the Rani, who was a Kaivarta by birth? It was very doubtful. But the day for the installation of the goddess was near at hand, and a suitable priest was not available yet. Revolving all this in his mind, Mahesh thought it reasonable to make an effort once, at least in that direction. However, he did not himself immediately set about doing that. He told the Rani everything and asked her to invite and request Ram Kumar to accept the office of the priest for the duty of the installation, at least, and perform all the rites on that day. The Rani had already a high opinion of Ram Kumar's fitness, as she had got the favorable scriptural prescriptions from him. So she was much delighted at the prospect of his officiating as a priest and sent him an invitation with great humility. I am now ready to install the mother of the universe on the strength of your prescription, wrote she, and have also arranged everything in order to perform that ceremony at an auspicious moment on the day of the coming Snana Yatra. We have got a priest for Radha Govinda, but no suitable Brahmana is coming forward to officiate as a priest of Mother Kali and help me in the act of her installation. Therefore, please make any arrangement that may seem possible to you and deliver me from this predicament. As you are a good scholar, well versed in scriptures, it is needless for me to tell that anyone and everyone cannot be appointed to officiate as a priest. Mahesh himself went to Ram Kumar with the letter conveying the request, explained the situation to him in various ways, and prevailed upon him to agree to officiate as a priest until a suitable one was available. It was without any pecuniary consideration that devout Ram Kumar at first came to Dakshineshwar. His only idea was that the installation of the universal mother should take place without a hitch. We heard from Hriday that the master's nephew, the account mentioned above, Ram Kumar's coming to Dakshineshwar, but Ramlal, the master's elder brother's son, gave a different account. He says, Ramdhan Ghosh of the village of Desra near Kamarpukur was an officer of the Rani Rasmani. The Rani held him in high regard for the efficiency and he gradually rose to be a secretary. And he was known to Ram Kumar. He sent him a letter of invitation to come to take the farewell gifts at the time of the consecration ceremony of the Kali temple. Ram Kumar came to Jan Bazar house of the Rani and said to Ramdhan, the Rani is a Kaivarta by birth. We are Brahmanas belonging to the Rarhi class. We shall be boycotted if we accept her invitation to take gifts. Ramdhan showed him a list and said, why? Just see how many Brahmanas of that class have been invited. They will all come and accept gifts from the Rani. Ram Kumar agreed to accept gifts and came to Dakshineshwar with the master that day before the consecration. There flowed a current of bliss in the temple on that day on account of the performance of yatra, that is dramas and the singing of the glory of Kali, the reading of the Bhagavata and of the Ramayana and so on. There was no cessation of that current of bliss even during the night. Every nook and corner of the temple was as bright as day on account of innumerable lights. The master used to say, going round the temple, one felt that Rani had bought the silver mountain and placed it there. Ram Kumar came to the Kali temple to see the festival that day before the installation. Now, let us go back, giving up the statement of Ramlal. So, Mahesh himself went to Ram Kumar with the letter conveying the request, explained in the situation to him in various ways. Now, then the humble request of the Rani and Mathur Babu, he lived there for the rest of his life. As he saw that Ram Kumar lived there for the rest of his life, as he saw that there was no other suitable priest available. All events of the world, great or small, come to pass by the will of Divine Mother. Who can say whether or not Ram Kumar, a devotee of Goddess, knew the will of that source of all wills and accepted the office. Thus, the Rani got Ramkumar to officiate as the priest in an unexpected way. She had the installation of the Divine Mother performed with great pomp in this new temple on Thursday, May 31st AD 1855, the day of this Snana Yatra. It is said that on that occasion the temple was continuously filled day and night with the noise and bustle of feasts and festivities. The Rani spent money unstintedly and did her best to make all the guests and other as happy as herself. Many professors of the Shastras, the scriptures, and Brahmanas, Pandits, the scholars, came on that occasion from famous centers of learning from such distant places as Kanyakubja, Kashi, Silhet, Chittagong, Orissa, Navadvip, etc. Each of them got a silk cloth, a wrapper, and gold coins as farewell presents. The Rani, it is said, spent 900,000 rupees on the building and the consecration ceremony of the temple. She purchased from Trilokyanath Thakur for 226,000 rupees the Salbari Paragana in the subdivision of Thakurgaon in the district of Dinajpur and executed a deed of gift and dedicated the property to the service of the deities. So like that we see so many things happening for the installation of Divine Mother's image there in Dakshineshwar. Some say that Ramkumar was given provisions and he cooked them that day with his own hands on the bank of Ganga and after offering the cooked food to his own chosen ideal, he took it as prasad. But this sounds improbable, for Ramkumar was a devotee of goddess and had himself given the prescription about the offering of the cooked food according to his knowledge of the scriptures, and that without the expectation of any gain. It is quite unreasonable that he himself did not take the prasad, offered food, and thus go against his own prescription and the injunctions of the devotional scriptures. The master also did not tell us so. Therefore, our impression is that at the end of the worship, he took joyfully the cooked food offered to the mother of the universe. But although the master joined the joyous festival wholeheartedly, he acted according to his strict principle regarding food. He bought from the neighboring market a pice means just like 1 cent here, a pice worth of fried rice at the approach of the evening and partook of it before he walked back to the school at Chamapukur for his rest at night. The master himself told us on many occasions many things about the founding by Rasamani of the Dakshineshwar Kali temple. He used to say, Rani Rasamani made ready to go to Kashi, the abode of Vishwanatha and Annapurna. She fixed a day for starting and had about 100 small and big boats laden. 100 big and small boats laden with various articles at the ghat. She got a prohibitory instructions from the goddess on the night immediately before the day of starting and gave up that resolve. She then engaged herself in searching for a fit plot of land to build this temple. Ramakrishna is himself telling about the construction of the temple. Ramakrishna said further, under the conviction that the western bank of Ganga is comparable to Varanasi. So the western bank of Ganga is comparable to Kashi or Varanasi. She at first searched for a piece of land in villages like Bali and Uttarpara on the western bank of Ganga, but failed to get one. For although the Rani was ready to pay a vast sum of money, the famous landlords of these places said that they would not come to Ganga down a ghat constructed at the cost of anyone else at any place in their possession. Therefore, the Rani was compelled, because it was the ego of those small kings and landlords. They didn't want to sell it because they didn't want to be subservient or seeing that she's doing great work in their land. So those people didn't agree to sell those places. It was all petty jealousies. The landlords and the small kings, they would not give that. He used to say, a part of the piece of the land selected by Rani at Dakshineshwar, it belonged to an Englishman. In the other part of the land, there was a Muslim graveyard associated with the memory of a holy man. The piece of land had the shape of a back of a tortoise. The piece of land had the shape of the back of a tortoise. Such a graveyard, according to the Tantra, is very commendable for the installation of Shakti, Divine Mother, and for her sadhana. Therefore, as if guided by providence, the Rani chose this piece of land. Again, he would raise the topic why the Rani installed the Mother of Universe on the Snana Yatra day itself. What happened? Why did Rani Rasamani install on the day of Snana Yatra? Because it was no way connected with the Divine Mother. It was just a small occasion, Snana Yatra. Why did she install Divine Mother on that day? So Ramakrishna himself wants to tell about it. So now all these things are told by Ramakrishna himself about Dakshineshwar temple and Rani Rasamani, because now it's already 10 minutes to 8 o'clock. We will stop our discussion here and then we will continue in the next class. Now, we will just give our time for some question and answer session. Any doubts can be cleared. So now we will stop our discussion for today. So the same thing will be continued in the next session. Today is Friday, so Saturday is tomorrow, that's the Bhagavad Gita class. Sunday and Monday will be again the early morning discussion on Ramakrishna, the Great Master. At that time, we will continue the discussion. We will study the introduction by Shardanandaji Maharaj and also life of Rani Rasamani in detail. And we'll come to Master's saying after that. So now, because we have just 10 more minutes left or 9 more minutes left, you can ask some questions, you can ask any doubts on the subject matter which we have discussed today. We have 9 more minutes. If you have any questions?
Maharaj,
Yes, yes, Madhu.
Maharaj, about you said about devotion without fear.
Yeah.
Because it's only over maturity. After some maturity, I think you'll get over that fear of God or power of God.
Definitely.
But when we were kids, I think we were told bhakti bhai se shuru hoti hai.
In the beginning. See, now I'll just take you how our Rishi and Manish have taken us. See, now there are 3 groups of people you can categorize by their quality, by intrinsic quality: Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic. Different types of people are there. So when we are Tamasic, our Rishis and Munis, our scriptures bring in the fear of hell, fear of punishment. So you can make them work and be moral and push them into the good life, righteous life, only by fear of hell and fear of punishment and those things. So those things, fear of hell and fear of God, fear of power of God, is only for the people who are at that stage. For the people who are Rajasic, they are not afraid of anything. So they will not be cowed down by the fear. They are Rajasic by nature. So for them, the Rishis and Munis devise this thing plan in which they will get into moralistic life and ethical life and lead a very good life, helping other people by the desire for heaven, by the temptation of good life in future and so many rewards. You will get good wife, good husband, good children, then you will get heaven, so many higher things. So they would be only tempted to lead a good life by rewards. The Rajasic people. Tamasic people, they cannot be goaded by rewards. For them, it is punishment. So in the beginning, it is punishment, fear. Then it comes to the next thing is rewards. You will get that, you will get this. So they will be interested in following the spiritual life or higher life for so many rewards, name and fame, getting so many other lokas, enjoyments. But for Sattvic people, as I told you about like Dharmaraya or Yudhishthira, so those things were not necessary, the fear or the reward. They love God for God's sake. They will love goodness for goodness sake. So that is the stages of evolution. Everybody has to pass through that. Now we have passed through that stage. From fear, we have got everything, and then for the rewards. So we should also understand the higher aspect of pure bhakti devotion, whereby just for God's sake, love for the God's sake, just like Prahalada, when he was asked to ask the boon, he told, I don't want anything, O Lord, I have got you, what more do I want? So that is the spiritual aspect in its sattvic form. That is the pure devotion. So now Ramakrishna himself gives a wonderful example in gospel. Yes, now God is our father and mother. Some Sikh devotees, Sardarji devotees used to come to Ramakrishna. They were the soldiers in the British cantonment, and they used to revere Ramakrishna as their guru, Guru Gobind Singh or Guru Nanak. So they used to think them as their guru and come for spiritual instructions. So while they were there, one of the Sikh guru, one of the Sikh person there, that military commander or something, was explaining, oh, God is very compassionate, God is very kind. And Ramakrishna told, why do you call God as compassionate? Why do you call God as this thing? Then they started telling, the Sikh devotees started telling, oh, God has created this world, stars and moon and sun and the season, everything properly, the trees and nature, the fruits and food on right time, everything is created for us. So is he not kind? Is he not very compassionate? Then Ramakrishna told, why do you call him compassionate? Suppose you are given birth by your father and mother. Father and mother have to look after you properly. They have to give all the care to you. So if father and mother do everything to you, do you think, do you call that compassion or kindness? It is the duty of the father and mother to look after the children. So once the father and mother give birth to the children, will a neighboring person or some other gully person will come, another village person will come and look after the children? It is the bounden duty of the parents to look after the children. Likewise, just like it is the duty of the father and mother to look after the children, it is the right of the children to demand whatever they want from the parents. Likewise, comparing that, Ramakrishna tells, we are all the children of God. God is our father and mother. So it is his duty to look after you properly, give all those things. So where is the question of kindness and this thing? Because if you think him as your father and mother, if you think him as something powerful, then you will start fearing. If you think God as your own father and mother, then where is the question of fear? Do you fear your father and mother? Your father may be the highest big judge, or he may be the big king or a police officer. The criminals will fear him. Will the wife and will the children fear the judge or the king or anybody? No. They'll be very free with him. Likewise, the emperor of this world, the Lord, is our father and mother. So it is his bounden duty to look after. At the same time, Ramakrishna is giving us the secret, that is your bounden right, birthright, to demand God whatever you want from him. If you think like that, if you feel God is your very own, your father and mother, then you can demand, you can go fight with him. Can you do that if you think that he's far away, something sitting like a king there? You can't do that. So the more near you become to God, the more you go towards God, then you will get that, what you call, free right for you to do that. So it's your bounden right. He's your father and mother. You can go and demand. And Ramakrishna gives the example. A child will go and ask, he is maybe something like 17 years or 16 years. He wants the property, share of his property from his father and mother. He demands from his father and mother. Father tells him, no, you can't get it because you are still a minor. You have not crossed your 18 years. So after you have finished your 18 years, automatically the property will be transferred to you. Why are you so eager? Why are you so urgent, making urgent? Then the child will tell, no, I want it now itself, give it, or I'm going to go to the court. I'll take you into the legal battle. What will the father tell? Oh, why should I just go into the court? After all my property has to go to my child. So even though the boy or the girl is not a major, he's still a minor, he cannot receive that property. He will give all the property and money to the child. Who will go and fight with the child? All this I have done for my own child, so he will give it. Likewise, Ramakrishna compares. Now you may be not ready to get his vision, to get the property, the spiritual property. Now, if you think he's your father and mother, then fight with him. Ask him, give me my property. What is the property of the Lord? The spiritual property, the visions, that purity and everything. Reduction of your anger, kama, krodha and other things, and give you a vision. Then even though you are not fit, the Lord will make you fit and give it. So this is the advantage of that freeness. That's what Ramakrishna gives of the secret. So that is that is pure devotion. Then you will not be worried about the powers of the God, the greatness of the God. God is my own. So with that attitude, go towards God, then you can enjoy it. Otherwise, fear, you can't approach. You cannot have any relationship. When you think God is your friend, when you think God is your mother, when you think God is your father, so much of deep relationship with him, and you can be free, no fear. That's all. That is a secret given out by Ramakrishna. It is for you to apply. If you want, you can fear and be far away from God. If you want closeness, you can give up all those fear. Go towards God, feel He's your mother, He's your father, and be very close. You can fight with Him. You can demand, just like the mother, the child will go and fight with the mother. Give me 25 annas. I want to get ice cream. I want to get chocolate. The mother will tell, no, if you eat ice cream, you will get cold. Don't do that. The child will not hear. It will go pull the dress of the mother, fight with her, give me, then go away, take your 25 annas or 50 annas and go away. She will throw some coin and tell, go and take ice cream. So like that, you can be free with God. So that is what Ramakrishna is telling. That is Shuddha Bhakti. Yeah, I think I have answered your question.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Any other question or any other doubt on the today's discussion? We have another 2 minutes left.
Maharaj, Aarti here from Bangalore.
Yes, mother, please tell.
Yeah, when we are asking God as father and mother about the highest spiritual fruit, does
Yes,
it turn to a desire and a bondage for us?
No, mother. Highest desire, like a desire for God, cannot be a desire. Just like Ramakrishna himself tells, suppose now the eating sweets will cause bile, it will cause disease like diabetes or bile. But for bile or pitta, the sugar candy juice itself is the medicine. Though it is a sweet, sugar candy juice is the medicine for bile. So likewise, desire for God cannot be considered as a desire. It will liberate you. Whatever that binds you to this world and puts you into trouble are the desires which are to be given up. But those higher desires which will liberate you, which will help to take you to God, cannot be considered as desire. It is liberating. It is helping you to go up. So it cannot be considered as desire. Desire for God, desire for devotion, desire to serve God, desire to serve the children of this thing, children of God are not considered desire. I think I have cleared, mother, your Arati Ma. I think I have cleared your doubt.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
Yes, mother.
Namaste, Swamiji. Namaste.
Namaste, mother.
It was really wonderful, Swamiji. We are really getting going out of our fears now. And we eagerly wait for Sunday and Monday and Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, Swamiji. It's really wonderful. Thank you very much, Swamiji.
Okay.
Pranams.
Okay, mother. Pranams. So we shall end the session with the prayer. Om Priyatam Pundarikakshaha Sarvayagneshwaro Harihi Tasmin Tushte Jagat Tushtam Prenite Prenitam Jagat Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.